Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fortem Wealth and Caspin webinar brought to you by Jackson Securities. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm Aidan Lane, and I'm here with Greg Miles from Caspin. Greg, how are you this morning?
Yeah, well, thanks, Aidan. Good to be with you.
Perfect. All right, thanks, Greg. So today's webinar, it'll run as such. Greg will have a presentation about the company and summarise a few things they've been doing recently and since their float. From there, I'll ask some questions to Greg, and we'll also take questions from the floor at the end. You'll see on the sort of right-hand side of your screen, there's a chat option for you to be able to ask any questions. I will endeavour to answer as many as possible, and if you have any further follow-up questions as well, feel free to email myself and I'll pass them on to Greg, and we'll do my best to answer them. Greg, now over to you with the presentation.
Thanks, Aidan, and good morning, everyone. So this is just a bit of an introduction. Well, this presentation will comprise a bit of a background on Caspin and some of our recent activities. And as you can see by that photo on the front cover of our presentation, we are actively exploring at the moment. So I'll just bit of a disclaimer. Usual disclaimer, you can read that at your leisure. So this presentation, if anyone wants a copy, this presentation was lodged on the ASX last week. So Caspin Resources, relatively new company. We listed in November last year. We were born from the takeover of Cassini Resources by Oz Minerals. And then which included a demerger of two projects, the Yarawindah Brook project and the Mount Squires project, into the new float, which became Caspin Resources. So those two projects, as you can see on the map, Yarawindah Brook project is a nickel copper PGE project not far out of Perth. Very exciting new mineral province in Australia, if not the world. It's been brought to light primarily by the success of Chalice Mining Julimar discovery, which happened in March last year, and it's just been going from strength to strength. And this presentation will reference Chalice in a few points. But we also have the Mount Squires Gold Project, which is a very early stage gold exploration play out in the West Musgrave region of Western Australia. And whilst early days, there has been some exploration there which provides indication of ore grade gold mineralisation. So we're encouraged by that, even though it's we haven't commenced exploration on that. We will be later on this year. And we also have what some people consider to be a third asset, which is a contingent payment of up to $20 million by Oz Minerals should there be any further transactions on the West Musgrave project, which was essentially the reason for the main catalyst for the Oz Minerals takeover of Cassini Resources. So that's something that we sort of put in the bottom drawer, if you like. There's a lot of contingencies that are attached to that, and for further details on that, I'd probably suggest having a look in our prospectus from last year. So we've got an interesting share register. Chalice Gold Mines are actually on the register. They participated in the IPO. They've actually got just under 10% stake now. And we also have some interesting strategic investors out of Asia, Tinci Materials, who are a large Shanghai-listed chemical company in mainland China. They have actually got a battery electrolyte business. We're really quite stoked to have a company of that kind of caliber on our register. And we've also got a pretty impressive board and management team, which we'll go into in some more detail. So there's just the corporate overview. As you can imagine, we've fairly short history to date. But we've been really well supported. The IPO has been extremely successful. You can see on the register there, Chalice just under 10, and then a lot of the top 20s have probably originally, so let me just backtrack a bit. A lot of as part of the takeover by Oz Minerals of Cassini, all Cassini shareholders were distributed shares in Caspin, as well as us taking on new shareholders. And what we were really happy to see was that a lot of the existing shareholders from Cassini actually put more money into the Caspin float, which included all these strategic Asian investors. So we're rapt to have that continued support. And I think you can see from the share trading, we've been reasonably stable since listing. So a little bit of an introduction to the board and management team. For those that aren't familiar with Caspin, Cliff Lawrenson is the chair. He's a really well established, experienced professional chairman, if you like. Has probably spent more time dealing with the sort of mid to large tier kind of companies. He's also the chair of Paladin at the moment, as well as a couple of other small juniors. Myself, I'm an explorationist. I'm a geologist by background. I've been in the exploration industry for over 25 years now, and most of that's been in this junior sector. Although I've spent a bit of time with the large miners as well. John Aronsky is a formidable global expert on early stage mineral exploration. Has got a background with WMC and BHP subsequent to that. Now consults to a range of people all around the world. We're really lucky to be able to have his knowledge and experience on tap. Justin Tremaine has also been involved in the junior sector. He's a corporate guy, been very successful. Just recently been through a takeover himself, and has commenced a new position with Manus Resources. And Simone Suen has also got an interesting background. She's been on the tools. She's run a mining operation here in Western Australia. Got in early on the lithium boom, but also forms a bridge to some of their Asian investor networks as well. So it's a very capable and well-rounded board. So now we'll just sort of dive into the Yarawindah Brook project, which is probably our main focus at the moment, and is really sort of the project that's captured everybody's imagination. And as I mentioned before, this is probably on the back of Chalice's Julimar discovery, which was announced in March last year. But I guess importantly, both Chalice and Caspin's predecessors, had been exploring this West Yilgarn, New Norcia region since 2018. And I guess we sort of saw it as a underexplored opportunity for nickel, copper, PG type mineralisation, similar to the sort of things that we'd been exploring for out in the West Musgrave. Chalice obviously have had an amazing run of success, and you know, as a consequence of that, they've also once they announced that discovery, they also acquired the bulk of the land position in the region. We're largely unaffected by that because we'd already established our land holding. But there's been a number of other sort of players acquire land in this region as well. But I guess what sets us apart is that because we've had that time on the ground over a number of years now, we think that we're probably a little bit more advanced than some of those other players. What attracted us to the project in the first place was the fact that there had been some interesting sort of PGE mineralisation. And so just to clarify, PGE stands for platinum group elements, which is predominantly platinum, and palladium. But there's a number of other sort of minor PGE elements as well. So this project had some exploration in the past, going back to the 70s and 80s, but had largely been forgotten about, and as well as there being sort of competing land use. So a lot of the more recent exploration in this part of the world has been for bauxite. So a relatively underexplored region for this style of mineralisation. So what we've been doing is, since listing, we've undertaken a really aggressive exploration program that commenced more or less straight after listing with airborne EM surveys. So for those that aren't familiar, geophysical surveys can work quite well for targeting this type of mineralisation. What we're looking for is sulfide bodies, and if there's enough connectivity in those sulfides, they induce an electromagnetic response. So you can cover ground quite quickly with a helicopter and get a very quick, broad base survey of your project area, which is probably an initial targeting method. But then old-fashioned soil sampling is also really useful, and in fact, we're starting to think that some of this PGE mineralisation may actually be better detected with soil geochemistry. So we've had guys on the ground, as you can see there, digging holes in the earth, and we send those samples off to the laboratory and get them analysed for very minute amounts of both nickel, copper, PGEs, and a suite of other elements. And I guess what this has sort of culminated now into our first drilling program, where we've drilled 2 targets that I'll talk about in this presentation: XC29 and Yarawindah Brook Hill. The program at XC29 has now completed, and we put an update out to the market on that a couple of weeks ago. We drilled 3 holes into the electromagnetic conductors, which is the figure on the right, and we're really rapt that the drilling has shown that those conductors are as a result of sulfides, which is exactly what we wanted to see. So this is the kind of host rock that hosts this type of mineralisation. So it's primarily pyrrhotite, which is an iron sulfide, but you might be able to see in some of those photos some sort of glints of yellowish minerals as well, which is chalcopyrite, a copper mineral. Really encouraging. But importantly, the platinum and palladium can't be visually estimated. We need laboratory assays to be able to determine if that's actually in the rock or not. And so those samples are now in the laboratory, and we expect them back early next month. But from what we've seen so far, that's really encouraging. And I guess it's probably it's shown that not only is XC29 prospective, but the belt of mafic and ultramafic rocks that these sort of systems are hosted in continues for about another 6 kilometres to the north, and also extends to the south. And that whole belt has become highly prospective. Where we are now is Yarawindah Brook Hill, and that's a photo of the rig on sort of down the slope from the hill. Yarawindah Brook Hill is more of a PGE target rather than a nickel copper target. As I said before, this is where some of the historical exploration has been in the past. The figure on the right shows the drill positions of some of that drilling. Now, whilst it looks like there's a lot of holes there, and there are, most of that drilling is actually quite shallow, only to 40 or 50 metres. So the past exploration just focused on this near surface weathered horizon, which was enriched in platinum and palladium. and they did a pretty successful job of outlining mineralisation over about 2 kilometres worth of strike. So that eventually subsided in the 80s, and then and subsequent to that phase of exploration, there was some sort of minor work done for nickel and copper, and the PGEs were more or less forgotten about. Our initial thoughts on this was that the PGEs might have been an envelope or a peripheral halo to more massive sulfide nickel copper mineralisation. But I think what we've seen through looking over Chalice's shoulder at Julimar is that this PGE mineralisation is significant in its own right, and this actually might be the surface expression of a Julimar style ore body. Now, if you've gone through any of Chalice's announcements, you'll have picked up that style of mineralisation is more of a disseminated style, and which is not recognised by those EM techniques that I was talking about before. So we've been able to go back and do first principles geology on this, and put a geological model together, and that's formed the basis for this drill program. So I guess what excites us is the fact that as I said before, most of that drilling is only near the surface. There's only a handful of holes that have been that have drilled deeper than say 100 meters. That's the DNN series, which I've sort of circled and highlighted there in the section. Now, unfortunately, all of those holes bar one were only assayed for nickel and copper. They were never assayed for PGEs. DNN7 is the exception to that, which had a small interval of about 40 meters was assayed for PGEs, but that's all. And which is unfortunate, because this is we do know that hole 7 does have nickel and copper, anomalous nickel and copper mineralisation throughout, which is exactly what you would expect to see at Julimar, but sadly no PG assays. So nevertheless, that small interval that we've got there, we think provides evidence that the PGs do extend below surface at depth and are completely open. Now you can see some of those intercepts there are quite significant, which is getting sort of towards the sort of ore grades that Chalice are turning up at Julimar. And so these are our 2 holes that we're currently drilling at Yarawindah Brook Hill. It's not rocket science. It's pretty simple exploration targeting. So you've got a blanket of near surface mineralisation, and we're drilling 2 deeper holes underneath to see if that mineralisation continues. And we're lucky that we do have a few sort of deeper holes that have been able to guide us in terms of where these mineralised horizons might be, but we're essentially drilling into the unknown, and that's really exciting for us. This Yarawindah Brook Hill has been hiding in plain sight for years and years, and we're excited that we're now essentially the first company that has explored the deeper depth PGE potential of this prospect. So that drilling, as I mentioned, is underway now. It's getting towards the end of the program, and as soon as that's finished, we'll look to update the market with some visuals on what we're seeing and expected timeline. So then what comes after this? Well, obviously we do have to wait and see what the results tell us. I think what we've seen at XC29 is quite exciting. Yarawindah Brook Hill is an exciting target, so there's some good short-term news flow coming up. But I guess what I alluded to before, this is just the beginning of quite what will be an extensive exploration program. We're only really just scratching the surface on the prospectivity of our project. The Brassica trend, which XC29 sits on, this package of mafic, ultramafic rocks, largely unexplored. There's some other EM conductors on that trend. We've collected some soil samples over part of that trend as well. All this data is still to come back to us. But I guess if we get any encouragement from the drilling results at XC29, that'll open up that entire trend. Yarawindah Brook Hill is also open to the north, south, and down dip. So there's a potential to extend exploration in sort of short distances from Yarawindah Brook Hill, but that figure on the left is essentially just focusing on the southern part of the project, which is where most of our work has been to date. The northern part of the project hasn't had any exploration at all. So we've got a pipeline of exploration programs. We've prioritised. You can't do everything all at once, so we've prioritised our exploration programs on what we think is the more immediate targets. But ultimately, we'll be covering the entire, essentially the entire project area's perspective. So we'll continue to collect these sort of regional scale data sets and fine tune our exploration targeting on the results of those data sets. So now just moving quickly onto Mount Squires. As I mentioned, out in the West Musgrave region of Western Australia, it is quite remote, but I have been operating out there for the last 6 years. So it's not for the faint-hearted, but we've got great operational capability in this part of the world, and it's also gold exploration is quite manageable, and we've really got good capability to operate in this region. So we treat the project as a gold prospect first and foremost, but it is worth noting that it is on the doorstep of Nebo Babel, which is now controlled by Oz Minerals. Look, I believe this is going to be Australia's next big nickel copper development, and we've got a very strategic position right alongside that, and in fact along strike. In fact, there is a prospect there, One Tree Hill. It's on that figure with some significant copper mineralisation, only 200 metres from our tenement boundary. We know that the host rocks continue into our project area, so that's something that we're cognizant of in our exploration, and we'll ultimately start exploration for nickel and copper in the not too distant future. But in the meantime, there has been some gold exploration in the past, and it's sort of on this northwest southeast trending structure. There has been a handful of drill holes drilled at the hand pump prospect, quite broad widths of reasonable grade of gold, quite shallow beneath the surface, which is exciting. But interestingly, we think that that's probably been the focus of exploration date, more because of the fact that it's where mineralisation comes to surface, where in the desert country, and there is some sand cover, and the vast majority of this project is actually sand covered. So that has provided an obstacle for explorers in the past, but modern techniques today can overcome that sort of obstacle. So that's just a bit of give you a bit of a feeling for what mineralisation looks like at hand pump. As I said, just below the surface there. We think that this style of mineralisation probably continues along this structural trend. and I guess what our programs are designed to do is to go and extend the reconnaissance kind of coverage. So there has been some soil geochemistry done in the past. We need to fill in the gaps on that, and then we'll probably follow up with a reconnaissance style drill program. So, RAB, air course type of drilling where you can cover a lot of ground relatively quickly. But from what we've seen so far is that this is a camp scale opportunity. The exploration to date has been really encouraging, but that exploration is just a tiny little postage stamp in this on this large structural corridor. So that's pretty much Caspin in a nutshell. I think you'll see that we've we like to think of ourselves as having the right team in the right place at the right time. The Yarawindah Brook project is in a very hot district at the moment, and we're active and we're doing work. The results of which will come out shortly, and then in due course we'll initiate work out at our Mount Squires project, which is one of the last kind of frontiers in Australia, and that could be anything out there. So it's we think that we're well positioned in terms of our projects, our management team, and the support we've got from our shareholders. So that's pretty much the presentation. So hopefully that covered most things, but I'm sure there's probably some questions.
Yeah, no, definitely gave a great overview of the company. Thank you for taking the time to do that. So in terms of your questions, first we might just start on a broader note. So just in terms of the whole mining industry at the moment in WA, and what's your perspective around that? How are the people feeling on the ground? And there's obviously, a lot of excitement around the whole industry as people are moving into it with, growing copper prices and gold, sort of sitting around a good price as well with a, potential for upside there. What's your insight there, and how is sort of Caspin involved in that at all?
Well, I think that was 3 questions, Aidan. So firstly, mining industry over here is pretty strong. It's been driven primarily on the back of strong commodity prices. So as you mentioned, copper, but as everyone knows, the iron ore price is doing quite well. Look, I think we're reasonably well positioned. I think Caspin, our DNA is really in base metals and precious metals. So that's great, because that's exactly the position where you want to be in at the moment. If you everyone will have seen companies like BHP and Rio talk about forward-facing or future-facing commodities. So that's all about battery metals and electrification. So the key components for that is copper, as you mentioned. Copper, not just for electric vehicles, but in all the infrastructure that's required to support it, and nickel as a critical element in batteries. But also, it's great to have a PGE prospect as well. Platinum and palladium, historically more used for catalytic converters in in everybody's internal combustion engine, but those elements are also used in a range of new technologies, including hydrogen fuel cells and that sort of thing. So we're rapt to have those sort of commodities in our portfolio, and as well as gold. I think you should always have a bit of gold in your portfolio, and as a hedge against a lot of things. And for a junior explorer, it's important to have a good gold project as well. So look, we think we're well positioned in terms of where we're placed in the market, and I think there's an exciting future ahead of us.
No, yeah, definitely, and you're right in the sense to have a bit of gold to hedge portfolios. There's obviously, a bit of scare in the market at the moment with rising
Yeah.
inflations, and so it's good to have that as a hedge. And you could see, some nice upside there in the short term, depending on what that data comes out with. And so, looking at Caspin over the next 12 months, what would you sort of like to see out of the company?
Well, I think we're a junior explorer needs to be reasonably nimble and needs to be able to adjust to what the exploration programs are telling us. And so, I think I covered it in the presentation. We've got a large sort of exploration program lined up for Yarawindah Brook. The short term will be dictated by the results out of this drilling program, but we're already planning for beyond that over the rest of the project area, and that takes us through well into next year. So collecting some of those other sort of regional data sets, which will provide additional targeting. So we've got a pipeline of prospects, and what we're trying to do is bring the lesser explored ones up to a standard where they're ready to be drill tested. And so I think that program will continue more or less all through this year and well into next. And then, as I mentioned, we'll also commence some of our exploration work out at Mount Squires. Now whether that's a transition from Yarawindah Brook to Mount Squires or we open up two fronts is probably, we'll make an assessment closer to the time. But look, I think we outlined in our prospectus a 2-year program, and if anything, we want to accelerate it and bring a lot of that work forward if we can.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. And so in terms of you guys as a company and what you're looking to do, I'm sure you're aware there's lots of other exploration companies out there. What makes you guys sort of different or stand out compared to those? And obviously with that, why would a shareholder choose your company compared to another company?
Well, it's my personal view, Aidan, that there's 3 keys to exploration success, and the first 2 are access to funds and quality people, and sometimes those 2 things go hand in hand anyway. Good people attract funding. So I think we've found that through our IPO we've been really well supported. I touched on the fact that we've a lot of the Cassini investors came with us in this journey with Caspin. So we've got good support, and I think we're well funded for now. We reported just under $7 million in the bank at the end of March quarter, but we've got a number of large shareholders that are willing to support us into the future. So that's really important. That's based around the team, the management team. That's a really capable board. The technical team have had a number of years now working in on these projects in these provinces, so quite experienced, and we're not going to be wasting any time coming up to speed and learning about the area where we've hit the ground running. So those two things are really key. And then thirdly, Yarawindah Brook is in one of the most exciting exploration provinces in Australia at the moment. So I couldn't be happier. And Mount Squires, it's out in the frontiers that you're going to find the next range of big deposits. We've seen that out in the Patterson just recently with Winu and Javier. So there are more deposits to be found out there, and so look, I think we're reasonably well placed.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll just go to some live questions now. So the question here from Andrew. Andrew is essentially asking, is there any sort of different techniques in the exploration that you're actually doing, the work that you're doing, that is different to how it's previously done in the past? Or is there any sort of technology that you're using that puts you ahead of anyone else?
Well, yeah. So exploration technology and understanding is improving all the time. So firstly, geophysical techniques, so that electromagnetic techniques improve every day. There's new improvements to the machinery and the way it's operated all the time. So that gives us an advantage over some of the historical explorers, and that's why you often see explorers going back over previous ground, but they're doing it with a new technique or a new machine, because the technology is always improving. But also our geological understanding is improving as well, and that's been the key at Yarawindah Brook. Is all of a sudden people realise, wow, we never thought that we'd get this style of mineralisation here. People have been driving through that region for 150 years and never thought to explore for this type of mineralisation. It's previously been thought of as a bauxite kind of ground. So that gives us that's an advantage on historical work. So it's a number of there's a number of things. I think our personal competitive advantage as a company is our experience and the fact that we're at a slightly more advanced stage of exploration compared to our peers.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Greg. And I've got a second question in here from Stephen. So Stephen's just asking, there was sort of since floating, the share price has done relatively well, but there was a bit of a sell-off about a month ago. Do you have any insight there? Did you lose any major investors, I think, is what he's trying to sort of hit at?
Yeah. So he's referring to, so we had a bit of a spike in the share price as we led into this drilling program. And then a little bit of selling when we announced visual results from XC29. Look, there's plenty of hot money in the market, as everyone knows, and people are looking for sort of short-term sugar hits. None of that came from our major shareholders. That's a bit of trading in the lower end of the register. I think some of the visual results that we put out on XC29 were interpreted negatively. I'm not sure why, because look, as I said, we're pretty happy with what we saw. I reiterate that the PGE mineralisation can only be determined through laboratory assays. So whilst we like to put out some visual descriptions of what we've seen in the market, it's not the end of the story. It's just the start, really. So look, I'm not worried about those sort of short-term fluctuations. What ultimately will drive our share price is discovery, and referring again to Chalice, anybody who's followed that story knows the power of discovery. So yeah, these little sort of short-term variations are just noise.
Okay. And then just hear from Stephen again. Stephen's just asked, what are the main sort of hurdles that you're going to need to overcome in order to continue drilling? And then what's the barriers that could stop you from achieving that?
Well, probably the biggest hurdle that most explorers face at the moment is access to a drill rig. So, this drill program was a little bit later than what we originally liked. It was delayed a few weeks because of, previous, the company that it was coming from extended their program. So, drill rigs are in short supply in Western Australia at the moment. Well, in fact, the labour market, full stop, is critical. And so, we do have those sort of challenges. In terms of our land access, we've got land access to everywhere that we want to explore at the moment. We try to work around farmers in this region. as you can see in the photo, we are working in agricultural land. We're coming into the cropping season, and so we try to minimise our footprint where we can, but we've still got the ability to work where we want to. But we need to work with those farmers and with the community. So, but that's the reality of a modern exploration company operating in 2021. We just get on with it, deal with it.
Mm. Yeah, no, definitely. And we'll just wrap up with one sort of final question to summarise it all. How do you think Caspin is placed to create value for shareholders?
Really well. So, as I said before, the greatest value driver in a junior exploration company is discovery, and that provides sort of exponential kind of returns. We've got a pretty solid base from which to launch from in terms of our shareholders, but the work that we're doing at the moment is really exciting. I'm super excited about Yarawindah Brook Hill. The indications there are there that it looks similar to what Chalice have got at Chulma. So that's a really good start, and we're drilling it now. And probably by sometime next month we'll have those assays back, and hopefully we're on the path to discovery right there. So any sniff though, and I think we'll be really well placed.
Yeah, no, definitely, Greg. So ultimately, yeah, as a company, you're working with resources that at the moment have very high potential upside, both the copper and nickel with the ESG future, and then obviously you have diversified assets with gold and the potential for PSG as well. So it's a very exciting company, and it sounds like you're in a great cash position to be able to explore that further and create that potential discovery and continue to put drill holes in the ground. So from our side, it's a very exciting company, and we look forward to seeing how you perform, in the near term and also the long term. All the best to you there. And from the audience, if you have any further questions, feel free to contact myself, or you can contact Greg as well. There's the email they have on the bottom of that screen, which you can find online. If there's anything that I can't answer, I'll pass that on to Greg, and we look forward to hearing any questions or anything you have to follow up. But thank you, Greg, for joining us this morning, and thank you to all our viewers for tuning in as well.
Yeah, thanks, Aidan. Thanks, Fortem Wealth.
Thanks, Greg. Have a great day.
Bye now.